Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course stream for fun. Today we're taking a look, continued look at the PlayStation 5 Pro, and this is really just my quick thoughts. I don't expect this to be a super long video or anything, just talking about my biggest issues that I have with the Pro. And I think this is important to talk about because this is actually changing probably what we can also expect for the next gen consoles and the refreshes of those next gen consoles if we even have one. And yeah, there's a heck of a lot more software associated with this than actually hardware. That actually changes stuff pretty significantly. And audio sounds good, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, my biggest problem with the PlayStation 5 Pro is not the price tag, though we'll get into that too. But yeah, it's not actually the price tag. It's the fact that the whole point of the PlayStation 5 Pro is directly dependent on the developers, because they actually have to patch all of this stuff in order it to be fully utilized for a lot of these games. So that includes the enhancement, which is the I believe that's the upscaling for the resolution. We can probably see this natively to an extent with the older games for PlayStation, but with the current gen stuff, the enhancement, there has to be a patch for that, and there also has to be a patch for the ray tracing. And I think both of these are frustrating because patches can also be messed up and can bug out the game and create other graphical issues. And then this actually can't be done natively like it could with the PlayStation 4 Pro. Not everything could be done necessarily with the PlayStation 4 Pro, but the 4 Pro was able to actually have a better CPU clock speed that was consistent. We went from about, I think it was 1.6, 1.7 gigahertz to 2.1 gigahertz. So there actually was a pretty substantial improvement there. And there were other hardware improvements too. The PlayStation 5 Pro doesn't really have a lot of these actual hardware improvements. The CPU is left alone. It can clock up to a 3.8 gigahertz, I believe, and then once it gets too hot, it has to downclock back to 3.5 gigahertz. So you're going to see some of these graphical improvements at the beginning of your play session, but not throughout the entire thing. The other thing too is that we're getting about 1.5 extra gigabytes of RAM, GDR6, which is great. But again, it's like that's increasing some of those texture or graphical improvements, or the ability of like ray tracing 2.0 and the upscaling. But again, all of this stuff actually has to be patched in by the developers. And yeah, that's my biggest issue. In order for the Pro to actually really be fully utilized as far as it can, the devs have to patch the games. And there's no guarantee that all of these devs are going to do it. And or that even future devs, future games that are still going to come out like GTA 6 are actually going to utilize this technology. Again, it's up to the developer. Now, I'm sure first party will for sure, but there's no guarantee for any of the third party stuff. And that's pretty frustrating when you're buying a $700, which now $1,000 console on eBay for pre-sale, just to have the possibility or the likelihood even to have these graphical improvements, which I think is crazy. Coupled with this too, this is actually going to increase the file size of every single game that's enhanced and uses ray tracing 2.0 or advanced ray tracing. And this is another concern because already with taking a look at an old game like Black Ops 6, or excuse me, Black Ops Cold War, we're looking at about a 25, 30 gigabyte update for HD textures and for ray tracing. And if we're having better improvements to resolution and we're having better improvements to upscaling and better improvements for ray tracing than what we already currently have for an older game, the file size is probably still going to even be bigger than that. And so how big are these updates going to be? And how much more space on your hard drive is going to be taken up by the same games you've already played. So that's also a concern of mine. So it's like 2 terabytes sounds really great because you're going from about 835 gigabytes to now probably 1.6 terabytes or maybe 1.7, depending on how the allocation is on the SSD. But yeah, still, like, these games are going to be bigger still. So we can probably expect games now to be around 150 gigs, maybe even some of them actually reaching somewhere between 150 to 200 gigabytes, which is insane, depending if these devs actually make these patches. Another thing is that, again, there's no actual CPU upgrade. It's the same CPU. And the CPU is directly affects the frame rate. It's not GPU. That's all graphical stuff. But yeah, you actually need a really good CPU for that frame rate. And so, with some issues, taking a look, Digital Foundry on YouTube has actually taken time to get the best equivalent they possibly can for the PlayStation 5 Pro, and taking a look at actual frame rate tests for like Space Marine 2. And even as close as we can get to match the Pro, the frame rate is not 60 on Space Marine 2. Sometimes it even dips down to like the 40s. And that's kind of concerning. Because this is a game that we have today, and apparently the $700 better version still can't run it at 60 frames like the Series X can. And so, yeah, not actually upgrading the CPU and just focusing on software is a really big problem. This also means, too, that Grand Theft Auto 6 likely won't run at 60 frames. GTA 6 is going to be the biggest graphically demanding game that's going to launch probably at the end of next year in 2025. And that's going to be frustrating. We have a premium console with no disk drive. There's a lot of people that still have physical discs. There's been a push for a long time to not have a disk drive. And, we've been seeing this since last generation with the PlayStation 4 and with the One X or the Xbox One. But these disk drives, they're not $100 anymore. I was just seeing yesterday, they're now up to $200 on eBay. So we went from $80 US to now over $200 US. Now, some of them you might be able to find for $170. There's auctions for some of these on eBay. But again, like, the scalpers are hard at work, folks. And it's just like, this is not a $1,000 console anymore. This is more. Because now we're looking at $1,000 for the actual console itself. And then if we still actually want to get a disk drive to be comparable with the original PlayStation 5 that launched, we're looking at another $100, $200 for the disk drive, which just sounds insane. Yeah, that's the bulk of it, honestly. And then, of course, we have a $700 price tag with no extra games. They didn't showcase anything. We know we still have Death Stranding 2 that's coming. We know we have Silent Hill 2 Remake that's coming. And there's some other remasters and some remakes. But again, there's nothing that's really utilized. And something, too, that Digital Foundry did is they took time to take a look at the effects for Alan Wake 2 as a third-party game. And Alan Wake 2 was having an issue with trying to do the upscaling and the graphical enhancements with ray tracing, that it actually bumped the resolution down to 835p. So it's like we're not even running with the Pro, the closest version we have to a Pro, we're not even running that at 1080p, which is ridiculous. That's less than a quarter of 4K resolution. And it looked really muddy. And I really suggest taking time to take a look at Digital Foundry, because they're doing a wonderful job on a lot of these technical things. If you're not into that, no worries. But if you are curious, Digital Foundry is a great place to go, because, yeah, they are digging into this as best as they can and to actually present the Pro as it's going to be. Excuse me. Of course, we won't actually be able to see what things are going to be like until the Pro really gets here. I'm also really curious, too, to actually see an entire teardown of the PlayStation 5 Pro, because I want to see what the heatsink is. Because another concern of mine is that the heatsink isn't big enough. Because some versions of the PlayStation 5, some of those later models, the heatsink was actually reduced in size pretty significantly, and that actually affects performance on some of the games that we've already had released, like Final Fantasy 16. So thanks for tuning in, folks. These are just my thoughts overall, but it's just like I can't wrap my head around having a $700 console, if you can actually get it for MSRP. That really doesn't do that much for you in the grand scheme of things. So thanks for tuning in. You can like, sub, all that jazz. Don't forget all of our other links to on YouTube page for Twitter, Twitch X, and Discord. And with that, folks, I'll see you guys on the next one.